Hello, on this video I'm going to talk about the appsettings.json file. I'm also going to talk about the parameter query or parametized query, and also I'm going to move the insert function to the database access layer. Now, this is a series of videos that I'm making. This is video number 3, and I'm going to put the links to all the other videos on the description of this video. Alright, so here's my Visual Studio, and this is where we left off from the past video. So here I have a couple of things that are wrong. One is that I do not like the connection string to be hard-coded. Two, the query is not parameterized. And the last thing is the home controller is not a place for you to do any calculation or any operation. The home controller should be as clean as possible, and right now it's not. So I want to address all of these points one by one. So the first is going to be the connection string. So I want to get the connection string to be in one line only because I want to copy the whole thing. So at this point in the video, I made a mistake. I deleted the semicolon. So right there, after the word zoo, put a semicolon if you are typing and coding together with this video. But I'll come back later and fix this error. So I want to copy the entire connection string, and then after that I'm going to go to Solution Explorer and I'm going to open the appsettings.json file. So this file contains a series of key and value pair. So for example, on line number 8, the key is allow host and the value is star. On line number 5, the key is Microsoft.ASP.NET Core and the value is warning. So for line number 5, key is default and the value is information. Now the JSON file does not come only with key and value pair information. It also comes with key, then a curly braces, and then a set of keys and values. So it's either key value pair or key and then a group of key and value pairs. And the logging is the same thing. So the logging is the key, and then I have a curly braces, and then all the way from here, that means logging is the key and the value of logging is a group of key value pairs. So now with that in mind, I want to create one key value pair for me right here. So right after line 8, I'm going to put a comma, and then the next key value pair is going to be a connection string for me, and then inside the connection string there will be a group of key value pairs, and then my first key is going to be my con string, and the value that this key has will be the connection string that I copy from the code. And then here again you see when I forgot to put the semicolon. So again, make sure you put a semicolon after the word zoo. But I will fix this issue. So I copy because I know this connection string here works. So now in the JSON file, I have a key, which is connection string, and then a group of key value pairs. Now it happens that I only have one key and one value pair here, but you could have as many as you want. So I'm going to go back now to the home controller, and now I want to eliminate this here, and I want to get the value from the JSON file. But before I do that, I need to modify the constructor a little bit. So first, right here in the top, I'm going to create a private read-only. It's going to be a iConfiguration underscore config for configuration. So now I have the configuration, and I'm going to change the controller here just a little bit. And then here I'm going to pass the iConfiguration configuration. And then inside the constructor, I'm gonna get the config equals configuration. And now I have a config right here, and then on the controller constructor, I receive the configuration and I set it. Now, because I have the configuration, I can start using that configuration to read the values from the JSON file. So instead of doing this, I'm gonna simply get that value from the JSON file. And the way I do it, I'm gonna use the underscore config dot, and I'll get connection string, and now the name of the connection string that I put on the file. And the name of that connection string is, I totally forgot, so I'm gonna go there and copy. So my connection string, or my con string, is the key of this value. So back to home controller. Now I'm gonna pass the name of the connection string. So my connection string is what I have there. Now I have a green squiggly here. So if I look at here, it says it's because it's possible to be null. So because it's possible to be null, I'm gonna put a question mark here just to make this string a possibility to be a null string. So at this point, I'm gonna put a stopper right here, and then I'm gonna run the debugger. And the reason I do that is I just wanna make sure that I'm actually getting the information from the JSON file. I just wanna make sure everything works fine so far. So I'm gonna press F5 to run the debugger. All right, so now I'm gonna click on submit here, because it really doesn't matter what I put here, because it's never gonna get to that point. And then if I look right here at the con string, I see that it has a value. Or you can also look on the autos right here on the bottom left, and then you see the con string. The con string does have a value here. Now, if you make a mistake, so I just put some extra characters just to purposely make a mistake. And I'm gonna run the debugger again. And then once I run the debugger again, you're gonna see the connection string actually has null here. That means it's empty. Something is wrong with your code. So I'm gonna delete this to fix my code. So next, I wanna fix this query. That's because this query currently is horrible. And it's horrible because if you write a query like that, it opens it up for a hack attacker called the SQL injection. So let's fix that. So instead of Joe, I'm gonna delete that Joe, and I'm gonna put @name, and then instead of cat, I'm gonna put @type, and then instead of pizza, I'm gonna put @foods. Now notice that there is no single quotes here anymore. So what I did here is to create parameters instead of hard coding the value. So if I run this program as is, it's not gonna work because there is no values here. So right after you create the command, you can set the values on this parametized query. And the way you do that is by using the command dot parameters add with value. And now I'm gonna put the name of the parameter. So in my case now I'm gonna have it @name, and then the value that I wanna put here as parameter. Now here I could put something like Joe as the name of the animal. However, because we have the animal model here, I'm gonna use the animal model instead of hard code. So if I put the animal model dot name, I get the name of the animal. And I'm gonna do the same thing 3 times, one for the name, one for the type, and one for the foods. And then instead of name, I'm gonna put the type of animal, and here I'm gonna put the foods of the animal. So parameterized query is very, very important. You must do this. The better solution is to use a store procedure on your database. But that's a topic for another video. So if you're not using store procedure, then you must use this. Do not use a hard-coded value or concatenating strings. Always use the parameters right here. All right, so at this point, everything here works fine. So I'm gonna do a sample run just to make sure that everything goes to the database. So first I'm gonna go to the database because I wanna see what's in the database now. So I'm gonna connect to the database, and then I'm gonna open the table and then right click, and I'm gonna do a select. I just wanna see what's in there. All right, good, there is nothing in my database. So I'm gonna go back to the code. And now I'm gonna run this code completely. So name, I'm gonna put boba. The type is going to be a zebra, and the food is going to be pasta. The zebra loves pasta. So I'm gonna click on submit, and I have an error. Let's see what the error says. So login fail. So it seems like I have a problem on my connection string. So let's go take a look on the connection string and fix it. And I wonder if I did something wrong here whenever I try to fix this thing. So I'm gonna put a stopper right here. All right, so I'm gonna run this again because I wanna check what is inside the connection string. So I'm gonna run this as a debugger. Click on submit, and then right here, user. Oh, I know what the problem is here. Looks like I'm missing a semicolon right here. Dang it. All right, so let me go to the Solution Explorer, open the app settings. Yes, right here I'm missing a semicolon. All right, so now that I know I'm missing a semicolon, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna run this bad boy again. I'm gonna put something here. I'm gonna put Julius, type is zebra, and the zebra loves tacos. So click on submit. Now I want to go to the database and I want to check what's in there. So I'm going to run this, and good. So Julius, the zebra who loves tacos, got into the database. All right, cool. So now my next step is to move everything here out of the home controller. So like I said before, the controller is not a place for you to write code. Controller only does controller work, which is receiving model or passing model and redirecting the browser to one place or other place. So because of that, I'm gonna go to the project, I'm gonna right click, and then I'm gonna add a folder. This folder is gonna be called DAL and stands for Database Access Layer. And now I'm gonna right click on the folder, add a class, and I'm gonna call this class the zoo class. Click on add, and now you can see that the zoo class is empty. Now I can either type all my functions here, which is the long way, or I can do the short way. So I'm gonna show you the short way, the way that I like to do the most. So first I need to include that DAO class. So using an MVC project with the name of my project dot DAL. So once I do this, I can access all the classes that are inside the DAO folder, which in my case is the zoo class. So right here on this action, I'm gonna create a object type zoo. So zoo equals new zoo. However, whenever I call the zoo, I want to pass the configuration because the zoo class does not have the configuration, and currently the home controller has the configuration. So I'm going to pass the config to the zoo class whenever I instantiate the object. Now the problem with doing that is that now I have a red squiggly here, and that means there is no constructor on the zoo class that takes a config as a parameter. So I can either go over there to the zoo class and type all the code, or I can get the Microsoft Visual Studio help to code that for me. So I'm gonna do the lazy way. So I'm gonna hover over the zoo, then show potential fixes. And then here I have a couple of options. One is generate constructor with fields, with properties, or just a constructor. I'm gonna choose the one to generate the constructor with the fields. So I'm gonna click there. And now I'm gonna right click on zoo and then go to implementation. And Visual Studio created all this code for me here. So I'm gonna go back to the controller, and then this is good. And now I'm gonna use the objects, and I'm gonna do the same trick. I'm gonna call a function that doesn't exist. So this function that doesn't exist is going to be insert animal. And I'm gonna pass the A, and the A happens to be the animal model. So that means I'm calling a function that doesn't exist, and I'm passing a model as a parameter. So I'm gonna do the same trick. I'm gonna let Visual Studio create that for me. So hover over, show potential fix, and then generate the method. So now Visual Studio generated the method for me. Now I'm gonna right click and then go to implementation. And now I have this function that was created for me. So Visual Studio put this throw new exception because this is not implemented yet, obviously. So I'm gonna delete this because I'm gonna implement this right now. All right, so now the insert animal function is created. I'm gonna get all the codes that I wrote on this action, and I'm gonna remove from here, and I'm gonna take it to the function that I just created. So now I'm gonna go to the zoo. So right click, go to implementation. I'm gonna paste all the code right here. So now all the code got pasted right here. I can see there is one error, and the error is because whenever Visual Studio create the configuration, it did not put underscore here. So I'm gonna copy, and I'm gonna paste the same config the Visual Studio created for me. All right, so now I'm gonna take a look if something else is wrong. And it looks like everything is good. So I can run this code. I'm gonna run the code, and I'm gonna put some information here. I'm gonna put Joe. Joe is going to be a lion, and this lion loves barbecue. So I'm gonna click on submit, and I'm gonna go to the database, and I'm gonna do a select on the database, and sure enough, I have Joe, lion, and barbecue here. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the codes, and I wanna do one more thing here. So everything here works fine now. Everything is beautiful. The controller is not doing any calculation or doing any operation. The controller is just calling a class to do the work. So this is the way controllers should be. All right, so but the zoo class on the insert animal, there's one more thing I like to do here. Every time you insert a value, you end up with a ID. So, and this ID here is created by the database automatically because if you recall, I made the ID a primary key, and I also set this as identity. That means it's auto increment. So I want not only insert a row, but I want to know the value of the new ID that got created. So to do that, there is a function that you can add on your query. So here I'm gonna add just some random values just to show you how the query works. So if you run this query, it will insert just as fine, and then after that I'm gonna do a select here just to show you what I have. So I insert the AABBCC row, but now I not only want to insert the row, but I want to know what ID it got. So in order for me to know what ID that got inserted, I gotta put another function over here, and that's select scope identity. And then I'm going to put as ID just because it's the name of this column. So now I'm going to run this program here, and then instead of A, I'm going to put ZZ here, just differentiates. So I'm going to run this, and now without any select, it printed the number 13. If I don't use this, it doesn't give me anything back. But if I add the select scope identity as ID, now it gives me something back. All right, so that's very important. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to take to my code. So right here by the end of my query, I'm going to add select scope identity as ID. Now, once you add this piece of code here, you can still execute non-query. When execute non-query here is you get nothing back from the database. But if you want to get something back, which you are here in this case with this code, then we have to create a different query. So instead of being the execute non-query, we need to create a reader. So SQL data reader executes reader. Then I need to read. So reader.read, read one row of whatever this command returns. So in this case here for us, no matter how much you run this query here, you will always get just one ID back. So because of that, I'm going to read just once. If you had several results coming back, then you have to write a loop for that. But because I only have one result coming back, I'm just going to put reader.read here. And now I want to get the string, so the string ID is going to be equal whatever the reader is returning. So I know that the reader is returning only one item, and that's going to be the ID. So I'm going to put here reader ID, and then .toString to convert this to string. Now, it is a possibility that this comes back as a null, so that's why Visual Studio has a green squiggly here. So I'm going to put a question mark here. This string can be null. And now I can close the connection. Now, it seems silly that you get the ID and you do nothing with it. So because of that, I want to return the ID here. But if I return the ID, now I got a problem, because this function is a void type of function. So I'm going to change from void to string. And then on the home controller who calls that function, I'm going to get the ID that the insert animal function returns. And if everything goes right, after it inserts a value in the database, I'm going to have the ID stored on this variable. So I'm going to run this program with the debugger just to make sure I do have the ID there. So I'm going to create a new animal. The next animal is going to be Jasper. Jasper is a bird, and this bird loves rice. Click on submit, and the stopper stopped, and right here on the ID, I get the ID equals 16. So now if I go to my database and I'm gonna select everything from animals, and I better have 16, which I do for Jasper the bird who loves rice. All right, so the whole point here for this video is, one, the controller should not be doing any operation, any calculation. And two, the connection string should be coming from the JSON file. Never hard code the connection string. Now, I want to say just one more thing about the JSON file here. This is obviously not safe, because guess what? The password and the ID are in clear text here. So this is not safe. Also, you have a trust certificate here, which is also not safe. So in a real production, you would have a certificate issued by a certificate authority. That's going to be much safer. However, it costs a lot of money. And also, you'd have a different way to pass the username and password. You'd not be in clear text. The last thing that I want you to take from this video is that never ever do a query concatenating strings. Always use a parametized query. The better option is to use store procedures on the database. However, parametized query is almost as good. Alright, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.